Hey, everybody. I'm going to give it a few minutes for people to join that might want to join. Because I know when I go live, it sends out a message and gives people the opportunity to watch if they want to. So, yeah, we will give it a few minutes. Please make sure to say hi. I do appreciate that. So let's see, it's just now 5, so hopefully I will still have a good connection. I am doing a presentation today more than anything, and so I am sharing the screen, and hopefully I will have good internet connection. I am connected with Ethernet, but it is coming in really, really low, and I'm not sure why. So we are just going to hope for the best. I do not know why it would do that, but that's okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for everyone that has joined. I really appreciate it. So welcome. This is Thoughtful Tuesdays, where we get together every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time to discuss every and any natural possible ways of overcoming disease or illness or just life in general. I am not a doctor or a nutritionist. I'm a health coach that is sharing my own health journey as I intuitively navigate information that I have obtained. So please do your own further research on any discussed topics to live in your own truths. If you would like further guidance in making lifestyle changes or learning what paths you want to follow, please visit my website and schedule a free consultation. That's at www.overcomingmyself.net. And if you find any of my content interesting, helpful, or even slightly intriguing, please make sure to like and share. You never know whose life this information can change. And as a bonus, you will be able to say and claim that you played a part once I've saved the world. Yeah, I'm just kidding. So let's start out with we're talking about grains today. This is going to be more of a presentation, which is why I've got the screen share going on. And it is all going to be about just my findings with self-milled grains and the difference between store-bought and so on and so forth. So I used to eat sandwich breads and rolls, pasta whenever I wanted to. I never had any issues. I never knew of. I never noticed anything. I never noticed bloating. I never noticed really any problems with eating bread and pasta and stuff, with the exception of the how you feel after you go to a buffet. But that was normal because it was just part of my daily life, and so I just didn't recognize that was actually an issue. So anyway, in 2018, I decided that I was going to stop medications for multiple sclerosis and go the diet and lifestyle road. And so I started to do research on different autoimmune and anti-inflammatory things, and across the board, almost, not all of them, but almost all of them all cut gluten. And so I knew that gluten had to go. I was 4 years gluten-free. And in that time, because I had gotten rid of all the gluten, whenever I did have gluten on occasion, it would floor me. So whenever I would have, it depended on how much I would have, but like, let's say that if I had gone to a restaurant and I ordered sweet potato fries, when I left the restaurant, I would feel just a little like fatigued. I would be just kind of fatigued, heavy, like just really not really being able to move so much, and just yucky, I guess, and bloated. And I didn't realize at the time that I was getting cross contamination because they fry those in the same fryer that they do chicken strips and the fried mushrooms and all of that kind of stuff. So that was a mild case. Well, if I chose to eat gluten, then, like, let's say I had something over a holiday or whatnot, and I actually ate something with gluten in it, then it would hit me to the effect of where my body would be so heavy and lethargic that I was like non-functional. So like my arms would be so heavy that I could barely lift them up, up to not even my shoulders. I mean, just so heavy. My legs would be so weak that I wouldn't be able to hold my body. My body would feel like it was 80, 100 pounds more than it actually was. Um, and so I would really become useless and completely immobile and not be able to do anything from gluten. And so I really thought that I had a gluten intolerance and just didn't recognize it all of this time. Well, then last August, I got a video from a friend and it was Sue Becker. She is with Bread Beckers, and the only thing she does is talk about grains and how the difference between self-milled grains and store-bought grains. And she is a food scientist, and she goes into a lot of depth and very informative. I encourage you to really look into, but I'm going to try to like recap a lot of the information as quickly as I possibly can for you tonight. But anyway, when I saw that video, it was like light bulb after light bulb after light bulb just went off. And it was like all the puzzle pieces were finally coming together. It just, in my gut, I just knew that this was something that I needed to add back into my life. Well, I shouldn't say back into my life because I've never self-milled my own grains, but I knew that this was something that I needed to do, that grains needed to be introduced back into my life. And so I was lucky enough to have found a girl that lives pretty close to me that self-mills her grains and bakes bread. And so I was able to purchase a loaf from her to try before I had to invest in anything in any tools and the mills and whatnot to be able to do it myself. So I did buy a loaf, and I will tell you, I was terrified whenever I was going to, eat that first slice. And I did. I took a little bit and I ate it, and I didn't notice anything. And I ate a little bit more, and then half a loaf into it, I recognized that I was having no reactions at all. None. I wasn't having any lethargy, no bloating, no weakness, nothing. So I was like, wow, that's interesting. So yeah, so let's get into it and let's see what's going on and why that might be. So there's a lot of different types of grains. There's more than 20. This is some of them. The ones with asterisks are gluten-free. The grains that I was getting and have been eating are the wheat grains, and so they are not gluten-free. But just for the purpose of the presentation, we will be primarily talking about wheat. Wheat has the highest density of nutrients, but all grains are very nutrient dense. Wheat is found in most store-bought products, and so any generalized statements, nutritional content are going to pertain to wheat. And I am looking off to the right a lot because I'm actually looking at my bigger screen where I can read. Because like I said, this is going to be more of a presentation than me just talking off what am I trying to say? You know what I'm trying to say. I'm reading more than anything. All right, so three important parts. If you picture an egg, the bran would be the shell. It's the outermost layer containing the antioxidants, fiber, and B vitamins. The germ it contains the bulk of the vitamins, minerals, oils, and that. I don't know if you're seeing, I can see my internet is starting to give me the circle of death. So hopefully we're still good. And then the third part is the endosperm. The endosperm would be like the egg white. It surrounds the yolk, and it is food for the germ or the yolk, and it makes up about 85% of the seed, and it contains starchy and some protein, and it's just food for the germ. And so we do, oh, sorry, I'm going to jump ahead. So a single grain that is intact contains more than 40 vitamins and minerals, such as insoluble fiber and soluble fiber, vitamin E, vitamin B6, thiamine, which is B1, riboflavin, which is B2, niacin, B3, potassium, iron, folate, protein, magnesium, selenium, zinc, phytochemicals, calcium, manganese, copper, vitamin K, phosphorus. And this is just the tip. This is the tip of what is in a single grain of wheat. What is a grain? Is grain that has been milled or ground up into flour and sifted. And when it's sifted, the bran and the germ is removed, and the endosperm is what is left. So if you take flour that has been, just everything's been ground up, and then they put it through these big sifters and shake it, the germ and the bran is what is left. They discard the germ and the bran, or they separate it, and the endosperm, which is, if you recall, is 85% of our seed, and it only is starchy carbohydrates because it's supposed to be food for the germ. So they take the endosperm, the one that has no nutrients whatsoever, and that is what they use for our flour. That's what they use for what we're being sold in the stores. So why would they do that? Why would they sift and remove the bran and the germ? Well, it started out that that flour was only for the rich. So way back, like 1800s, way back, even before then, it was only for the rich. They loved the light, fluffy, decadent breads and pastries that was created by the sifted flour. There was no correlation that they realized to taking, they didn't know where the nutrients came from and whatnot. And so they just loved that kind of bread and pastry was made by just that lighter part of the flour. So they have their workers sift it, and they would make their breads and pastries with just the endosperm, the lighter, fluffier, white flour. So, but then fast forward to the early 1900s, I think it was like 1910 or something, large scale milling technology allowed for everybody to have access to sifted flour. So then they were basically all the flour was being milled and sifted. And so everybody now had access to white flour. Well, now that the masses were eating white flour, this quickly led to widespread sickness from nutrition deficiency diseases like anemia, which is iron deficiency, pellagra, which is a B3 deficiency and causes GI disturbances, skin eruptions, mental insanity, and death, and beriberi, which is a B1 deficiency, which is a nervous, yeah, if you think about all those things. So eventually that the problem was that the flour had been changed, and they had asked for the bran and germ to be added back in, and the millers did not want to do that. They didn't want to do that because for two reasons. Number one, whenever they sifted it, because the oils were in the German bran, they had to take those oils out in order to give it a stable shelf life that allowed them to be able to sell to everybody, because the oils would create an environment where that once it was milled, it would oxidize and go rancid within just a few days. And so they needed that removed in order to have it shelf stable. So that was the first part. The second part was with the bran and the germ, they were able to take that and they were selling that to the farmers for animal feed. So they were getting two paydays. They were getting one from the consumer buying flour to make their breads and pastries, and they were getting one from the farmers for their animal feed. So they were not about to stop that. So anyway, it took them in 1948, so almost 50 years later, the government required for the flour to be enriched. So enriched is where they had to add the iron and B vitamins, the B1, 2, and 3. Yeah, sorry. They had to add those back in because they found that the deficiencies. I don't know where I got B2. I'm sorry. The ones that I just talked about a moment ago, the B3 deficiency, the B1 deficiency, and the iron deficiency, they had to add all of those back in. And so they enriched it with just those things. And then another 50 years later, in 1998, they added folic acid. And that was because they realized that a lot of the birth defects were from the deficit of the folic acid. And so the scary part of that is that it literally took over 100 years of people eating this stuff, thinking not and getting sick and having no understanding of what it was. And a lot of this could have all been avoided had there not been greed in the very beginning and the millers, just kept the bran and the germ with the endosperm as it was intended from the beginning. So anyway, I digress. Let's go on. Okay, so what about whole grain flour in the stores? It contains all three parts, right? Well, sort of. So the grains that are whole grain or whole wheat, or whole grain, I should say, they are still milled and sifted, but then the bran and the germ is added back in. But the government says in order to be able to get the stamp whole grain, only 51% of the bran and germ have to be added back in. So I have a few issues with this myself. First of all, once milled, the grain oxidation begins, the breakdown of nutrients, and it spoils within about 3 days. So with that being said, preservatives must be used. Also, the few vitamins and minerals that are added back in will be depleted before it reaches the store, let alone your house. And then additionally to that, adding 51% back in changes the intended ratios of all of the components for proper digestion. So I just feel like it's a lose-lose situation. As much as they felt like, adding these things back in would be more beneficial, I still feel like it's very deceptive, and it's still not good for us. So that is proofs in the pudding, so to speak. So the also fun fact, only the term whole grain is monitored by the government. Whole wheat is not. So if you see anything that's labeled whole wheat, it means absolutely nothing. There is nothing is monitoring that whatsoever to ensure that it is whole wheat or quality at all. So steer clear of that for sure. So store-bought flours, some interesting facts. The trace amount of oil that remains, because even with it still with the bran and the germ, it caused yellowing. So they began to use nitrogen trichloride to bleach the flour. Now, that's no longer in use because they did find that it was making dogs horribly sick to the point of even death when they were using it in their food. So they did stop using that, but they do still use chlorine derivatives to bleach the flour. Benzoyl peroxide is used to neutralize the flour. It's kind of like a flour enhancer. It destroys vitamins, E vitamins, and it's also linked to respiratory problems. Potassium bromate. It strengthens the gluten structure. So the gluten is what allows the stretch and the rise. But it's also known to cause liver and thyroid issues. And if you think about, more than 50% of women struggle with thyroid issues. So that's kind of scary. But this is problems in all store-bought flour. It doesn't matter if it's white or wheat or anything. It's in all of it. So what's in your bread? These are a couple of ones that are pretty common here in the United States. Pretty basic sandwich bread that people use. I've got the one that's 100% whole wheat. But what I want you to look at and notice is, first of all, we've got our serving size of 26 grams. The sodium is 110 for the first one. It's 120 for the Sara Lee. The fiber is only 2 grams on the Nature's Own and less than 1 gram on the Sara Lee. The protein is 4 grams on Nature's Own and 2 grams for Sara Lee. And then if you look down at the vitamins and minerals, D is 0, calcium is 4%, iron is 4%, potassium is 0, thiamine is 8%, riboflavin is 4%, niacin is 6%, and folate is 4%. Very, very similar on the Sara Lee side of things. The folate got cut out there, but it also is like 4%. So if you notice, earlier I showed you there's more than 40 vitamins and minerals in a seed, and there is nothing here except for what they have enriched it with. So, okay, thank you very much for what? So anyway, we are definitely nutrient deficient, and it is my belief that the grain is where we are supposed to be getting it. And because of the way that we process it, we are not. So what is in a self-milled whole wheat grain? Again, 6 gram serving, you have over 8 grams of protein, 4 grams of fiber, no sodium, 14% iron, 6% potassium, 39% of the thiamine, 18% of the riboflavin, and 10% of the niacin, and 25% of the folate. So it's my understanding that a grain is actually where we are supposed to get the majority of our folate from. So some people ask if we should be eating grains at all. I've seen a lot of people who completely cut them out. And it's for several reasons. Number one, the argument is we don't have a 4-chamber stomach like a cow does. We're not meant to eat them. And that is a valid point. But it is my belief grains can be stored for thousands of years if a kernel is kept dry and intact. And no, we can't eat them straight from the ground like a cow does, but there is a lot of history through, and biblical is the most obvious, but just even beyond biblical, if you go through like Egyptian and stuff like that, there's a lot of history as far as how the grains do sustain us through times of famine and hardship. And yes, it has to be like the grains have to be boiled or ground and milled for our digestion, but the grains allow us to continue to live and have a whole complete source of food when those seasons are come and go that do not allow us to have our fruits and vegetables and other crops. So that is where I fall online for that. And of course, you have to make your own decisions. The other thing would be wheat belly movement. There's a book out there called Wheat Belly. They say that the removal of all grains can aid in overall health. I don't disagree with the wheat belly in that aspect, but it is written from the aspect of store-bought flours and grains and stuff. Again, if you go back to the self-milling, that anybody who self-mills their grains would aggressively show that those claims are not true of fresh milled grains. Third is that gluten-free is considered anti-inflammatory. Again, not something that I would argue with, especially with my own findings. But I would have to say, if you are purchasing your flour and not milling it yourself, then yeah, you are probably having a gluten intolerance. Again, because the way that it's all put back together, even you're getting whole grain, the ratios are still not correct. And so, yeah, grain as you know it, flour as you know it, is probably creating a gluten intolerance for you. And then most of our wheat is Roundup ready. That is a problem. Now, because of that, I only buy organic wheat berries for that reason. So, do what you can there. That's pretty much, unfortunately, in the United States, pesticides is definitely an issue all around. All right, benefits to ditching the store-bought flour and eating self-milled whole grains. Fiber. Whole grains contain both soluble and insoluble fiber. Vitamin E, it helps widen blood vessels to keep blood from clotting. Antioxidants and protects cells from free radicals. It helps keep the immune system strong against viruses and bacteria. Many have testified to lifelong warts disappearing. I mean, after just weeks of doing nothing more than adding self-milled grains and bread and muffins and things like that to their diets. And if you didn't know, warts are viral. Zinc. One serving contains 43% of your recommended daily intake. One serving. So, I mean, that says a lot. Like, the whole COVID portion, I don't know if who else had heard that like zinc was such an important thing. We are very, very zinc deficient. And again, your grains, your self-milled grains, eaten the way that they were intended to be eaten, contains 43% of your recommended daily intake. Plus, as I mentioned before, the more than 40 vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. It's low glycemic. Breads and pasta made from fresh milled grains can be eaten by type 2 diabetics. Maybe type 1. I am not knowledgeable enough to know the differences and what the criteria is for type 1. So you would really have to research that for yourself. But I do know for type 2, my husband is type 2, and I feed him this bread all the time. In fact, I make him biscuits and gravy. So it's really, really nice that I can make him the things that, basically he was told that he'd never be able to have again. And he has no problems at all with this bread with blood sugar. None. So weight loss and management, again, it aids in proper digestion. Allergies and sinus congestion disappearing. Many people notice that they no longer have to take antihistamines and that their allergies are they're gone. Helps reduce cholesterol, aids in natural gut bacteria. And back to the fiber and just the digestion in general, I have yet to meet anyone that struggles with regular bowel movements that is eating self-milled grains on a regular basis. So there is that as well. So, I mean, most of our, I think, gosh, I don't know what they said. It was like, it's more than like 70% of the United States is like constipated. So we really need some of these self-milled grains. All right. You are eating more refined wheat than you think. So the obvious places are going to be your flour, your bread, buns, rolls, biscuits, cake, pasta. A little less obvious is going to be chips, crackers, cookies, pies, graham crackers, Cheez-Its, panko. Hidden is going to be your seasoning blends, barbecue sauce, soy sauce, beer, imitation crab meat. That one got me. It's I don't really care for imitation crab meat, but I love crab. And, anyway, curry powder, fudgesicle pops, hot dogs, ice cream, instant ramen noodles, marinades, gravy, dry packet gravy as well, salad dressings, soups. That's just the beginning. That's why my rule of thumb, whenever I do shop in the grocery store, if I'm eating, I typically do try to stay gluten-free because it just keeps me from being exposed to all of those things that I just listed and more. It is in so much stuff that are in our grocery stores, like a crazy amount. So trying to stay gluten-free really just helps stay away from that. We're being pumped full of refined wheat and it's killing us. So which is why I think when people go gluten-free, they feel so much better. It's not necessarily, again, not necessarily the gluten, but it just kind of corresponds with each other. So, all right. So what about the gluten? Gluten is a protein that is naturally found in many grains. It acts as a binder, holding food together and adding a stretchy quality. So I think, what if gluten wasn't the issue, but instead the industrialized milled wheat is? It just so happens, just like I was just talking about, when you cut gluten, you have stopped ingesting the dead wheat. So maybe the dead wheat is actually the problem. Because, if I had an actual gluten intolerance, it shouldn't matter if I get it from self-milled grains or store-bought products. at least in my logic. So, and I also think that the proper ratio of gluten, fiber, vitamins, minerals, nutrients providing by milling the grain myself is also a key factor. So, in conclusion, if you make one change in your diet, I would start milling your own flour. It really is quick and easy and cheaper once you have the mill, and you don't even have to spend a lot of money on the mill. I mean, I personally buy everything through Facebook Marketplace first, used, so that I can get an idea of what it is I want to do, or if I even like doing what I'm doing before I spend any money on like more of the higher end products. Um, so you can definitely do it that way, but there's a lot of different varieties as far as mills are concerned, or you might even be lucky enough to have somebody in your area that is self-milling grains and doing baked goods. So, so yeah, if you do one change in your diet, I would highly recommend that you stop getting anything in the store that has anything to do with the wheat, and that you start using your own flour. So that's the one thing I would do. And again, the easiest way to do that is to just like basically be gluten free as far as stores and restaurants are concerned. But don't worry, because you're still going to be able to enjoy all of the bread and pasta and cake that you want with your own self-milled flour. You can, do all that stuff with it. So anyway, so that is all I have on grains. I tried to cram as much information as I could, as quickly as I could for you. Hopefully you found that helpful. Again, if you do find any of the information helpful, I ask that you like the video, share it. You never know who it might help, whose life it might change. This information alone has changed my life. Again, if you want more information, you can watch videos with Sue Becker. If you are not a religious person, just try to ignore the religious aspect, because she does come from a religious perspective, and just get the actual food knowledge. But yeah, it's great. Sue Becker, and you can find her on YouTube. She has a lot of information on it. She's really good. So anyway, that is all that I have. I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And next Tuesday, I do not know yet what is going to be about. I will post something throughout the week to give you an idea. If you have any thoughts or ideas or things that you want me to talk about or go over, or have a discussion, then just shoot me a message or comment below, or however you want to do that. So, all right. I hope that you, as I said, have a great rest of your night, and I will see you next time. Always takes me forever. Bye.